Welcome to today's Mishna Berurah extravaganza. We're continuing along in the laws of Kriya Shema, an extravaganza of Kriya Shema. So we had learned about how to do Kriya Shema correctly. Now we're going to learn about how to do it incorrectly. So it's kind of like how to drive your car optimally. And then it's basically, here are the fail videos of everything you could do that possibly go wrong. Hopefully it'll all still work out in the end. So that's kind of the interesting follow-up to the previous section: how to pronounce it correctly, how to pronounce Hebrew words correctly, all of these things. So it's just really interesting to see go from mina kotze ela kotze, from one extreme to the other extreme. For those of you wondering, no, I'm not related to the Walls guy who was just asked to be the running mate of the president of the United States, for the vice president of the United States. Not related to that Walls at all, and we spell our last name differently too. Anyway, it's interesting. There's an interesting etymology to these last names. I'm curious if his family also has roots in northern Germany. My family bounced around through different iterations of Germany and Poland with Ashkenazi migrations. So curious if this guy was just from that part of northern Germany, similar part of northern Germany. So now we're going to learn about one who is not precise, okay, or didn't make it audible. Yep. WALZ. Okay, so the first halacha says, even though it is a mitzvah to be very precise regarding the pronunciation of the letters, should you recite it and not be precise, that is okay. Well, not that's okay. You still fulfill the obligation. I guess you could call that you could call that being okay. Okay. So it's not. So Mishna Berurah adds a couple of things. Okay, you're not skipping words. If you skip a word, you don't fulfill the obligation. So what does it mean to not be precise? You didn't put a space between those words that kind of sound like they're blending together. So for example, we said Laman tizkuru. If you don't put a stress on the z part of it, man tizkuru, that would be when it's not cool. So we say you fulfill the obligation. Now Mishna Berurah adds, you should still be very careful about this. And it really says that one who is very particular about it, I made this joke last week, if you guys remember it. One who's very particular about it is saved from the fires of Gehinnom. He chills Gehinnom. Why? Because since a person fires themselves up to do the Shema as properly as possible, that prevents the regular heat from the external heat from sort of getting to you. Okay? So the joke I said last week was, why do you say Laman Tizkuru? So you don't hear it Tizkuru, that you do it for the reward. But the joke here is that there is a reward for doing it correctly anyway. So that is the statement over here. All right. So that's the first thing we learned. So if you skip words or skip letters in the Shema, okay, you don't fulfill the obligation. You have to go back and say it again. This is the second halacha now. So you may recite the Shema in any language. Okay? But you should be careful not to change the meaning in the other language. And you should be careful to pronounce it in that language. Okay? So even though we should recite it in the holy language, which is Hebrew, right? Which is called Lashon HaKodesh. If you say it in English or you say it in French, okay, you need to be careful to say it and be careful how you're saying it. And when we say you can say it in any language, Mishna Berurah points out, you have to understand that language. And also, when you recite any prayer, Shemona Esrei, you can also do that for benching. You can also do that for Kiddush and any blessings that are said over mitzvos, any blessings said over fruits. You could also recite Hallel in any language. Okay? Now that's the essential law. The best way to do the mitzvah is to obviously recite everything in Lashon HaKodesh. Okay? That's the best way to do it. And nowadays, some people are very careful that you shouldn't recite it in any other language, but really should say it in Hebrew, because some people don't really know how to pronounce them or explain them in different languages. Okay, so, for example, the word vishinantam. So, it means a couple different things. Some people say that, it means that it means to teach. Some people means to make a person more aware and sharper. Okay, and that's, vishinantam means to make the words more available to readily recall them, and they're sharpened, so you're sharp with them. That if a person were to ask you about it, you would be able to respond to them in it. Okay, and other things too we mentioned in Kriya Shema. We don't really know what the actual singular expression of them refers to, especially when the Hebrew has a couple different meanings to it. So, like the word totafos, how do you translate that into English? It doesn't really have even an exact Hebrew translation. So we kind of estimate what that means. Okay? And even if you don't understand Lashon HaKodesh, you can still recite that and Shemona Esrei, Berachos Hamazon, and other these things. Even if you don't understand it, you still fulfill the obligation. Okay? So at the very least, everyone seems to know what the first pasuk actually means. So that brings up an interesting question. So what does it mean? Does it mean that it's better to recite it if you can't read Hebrew? Is it still better to recite it in Hebrew? Recite it, Baal Peh, and so on and so forth. So there's an interesting statement over here. So in a similar fashion, the Kaf HaChaim also brings some interesting stuff over here as well. So you could recite in any language that really, if you don't understand Hebrew, is that still the preferable way to do it? So like reading a Megillah, for a person who doesn't understand the Megillah Esther, you can still fulfill the obligation when you hear it in Hebrew. Okay? And so that seems to be the main din. Okay? So the reason why the Kaf HaChaim points out that you should really try to focus on the Hebrew itself. And so it's entirely possible that what you could do is recite it in a transliteration. So that would also seem to work well as well. I think that, according to most opinions, that would be beneficial, if not preferable. Okay. Halacha 3, you must make the Shema audible to your ears, what you recite out of your mouth. Okay? So you can't recite it with your mouth closed and then say it inside of your head. Right? You want to hum it. Don't hum it. You have to say it with your mouth. So if you know you say it with your mouth but don't make it audible, that's okay as long as it comes out of your mouth. So that's the important thing. So you can't hum the Shema to yourself. Okay, that's part of the main part of the halacha. Why is that? So the Mishnah Berurah explains. Excuse me a second. Okay. And this is not part of the essential requirement. It's only a rabbinic requirement. But some people say that it is a Torah requirement to make it audible to your ears. And the reason why it's a dispute is because it says Shema Yisrael, but we don't hold that it has to actually be audible. So it's a question of whether or not, since the basic meaning of the verse is hear, we don't say that it means to have to hear it. It only means that you have to pay attention to it. Okay? But everyone should try to make every blessing they say audible to themselves. As long as we said, you say it. But to just sort of hum it to yourself or to think about it, you don't fulfill your obligation. Why? There's a long discussion in the Mishnah Berurah over here about hirhur, meaning if it's thinking about it, the same as saying it. You know how people, they tell you the type of texters where they think they've texted you and they didn't actually send you a text? So if you didn't send it, it doesn't count. Same thing too, if you don't say it with your mouth, it doesn't count. So even though we say that, you still pronounce it, and we say that thinking about it is not enough, you have to, at the very least, when you are not able to make it audible enough, you should be able to say it out and focus on what it says. And Hashem will give you a reward for this. Okay? So, however, some people say that you should go ahead and recite it again. Now, he says, when would this... So some people wonder, when would this be applicable? So a person should think about somebody who is, sleeping at night in their bed, and, it's really hard for them to get up out of bed, and they can't wash their hands. And some people think that if you're very thirsty and you want some water, and you would normally make a bracha, that you should drink the water without saying a bracha. But some people say that, you have to actually be truly ill to not do that. Okay? And also, it's entirely possible that if you're really thirsty, it depends on how thirsty you are, you may not have to say a bracha on it at all. And the point is that if you have water to drink, you should be able to have water to wash. So you can still wipe your hands on other things around you as well. Wipe it on the wall to clean your hands off, as long as no obvious dirt. We learned this earlier in Siman Dalet. Okay. Moving right along over here. So halacha 4, if for whatever reason a person is very ill, or they're somehow stuck somewhere, and they can't open their mouth to recite the Shema, the Shulchan Aruch says that would fulfill the obligation. And the Ramah brings down that in places where it's not clean, and a person can't clean the area, for example, there's types of filth or feces or other types of things like that, a person should think about the Shema. Okay? Okay, however, it shouldn't be truly very dirty, because then you can't even think about that as well. So this is where the whole discussion we just mentioned talks about with hirhur is not the same thing, and we don't really agree with doing that. So if it's really, really dirty, you can't even think about it. All right, so the question is, why would we not make the blessing on water when we're truly thirsty? The point is that water needs to be something that is a benefit. It's something that you would actually get some pleasure out of. Sometimes water, we drink it not because we are enjoying it, but because we really do need it. So we're saying over here that in a place that's truly dirty, that you should refrain from saying any blessings whatsoever. So, one example the Mishnah Berurah brings is that people who drink water in the bathhouse, it's wrong. Okay? Because you can't think about the blessing. And there's no reason to compel you to do that. Okay? So he says, but, we'll talk about this more in section 84, and I'll talk about it there as well. However, I don't see why that's necessarily a problem to drink there. What if you're drinking just for your health, not because you're trying to drink, or you're trying to drink to cool down? So, the question that you just asked over here So it seems like there's ways around it that would not impact this feeling in general. Okay. So people should preferably try to wash your hands before saying the blessing. Rub your hands on something to clean them off. So if you want to take a drink at night, when you've just woken up, you should also drink less than a revius is another option over there. But some people don't like that example. Okay. Some people also don't like. Well, they don't like a lot of these ideas. Okay, so those are kind of the issues right there. Continuing on in the halacha over here, the shliach tzibur should make sure that they are loud enough to be heard for Kriya Shema, as everyone should hear Kriya Shema from them, the entire congregation. And through this, everyone together will declare Hashem's kingship, or appoint Hashem as king, all at the same time. So that is the end of. Is that the end of that? I thought there was more Mishna Berurah to this. 1 second. And that's it. That's the last statement. The last one was just talking about. That's it. That was the last one. I thought there was more here. Okay, so that is the last halacha. Well, it was a short class today, so I don't think we're going to have time to talk about the next set. It's quite long. It's 9 sifrim long, so we'll have to have a whole class for that. So today's class will be a little bit short, so my apologies. But we'll pick up next week that a person should recite the Shema seated and not lying down and not while trying to sleep. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we will see you next time. Take care.